Dr. Michael. I'm really stoked to have you present to us on this bright and breezy Tuesday afternoon some thoughts about these matters, which are so crucial to us. So I think I just want to welcome everybody onto the call. If you have any questions, just please keep them for the second part of this presentation. For those who don't know me, I'm Fred Rode, the CEO and founder of Heavy Chef. And it is my great honor to be hosting Dr. Michael Mol, a long-time friend of Heavy Chef and mine personally. We love your work, Michael, and we love the energy and the clarity that you bring to this space. And it is just such an honor to have you here. And so if I may just invite you, if you'd like to do your presentation, we're going to go through a couple of slides and then afterwards open it up for a Q&A.
Brilliant, Fred, thank you. And thank you for the invitation. I mean, you're trusting me with your community, with advice that you have no idea what I'm going to come out with. I know Mo's going to just talk about coffee, so I definitely will do that, Mo. But guys, the presentation is not meant to be death by PowerPoint. It's really just to keep me on track because there's so much I do want to share with you, and there's so much to kind of squeeze into this next hour. And it's not all going to be me. We're going to open up for questions afterwards. I know Fred's got a couple of questions he wants to ask me. So let me share basically a couple of slides, and then we'll take it from there. And if you have questions, by all means, just shout. We'll be ready for you. Let me jump into one or two little myths before we get going any further on what I want to talk about. I mean, Fred spoke about energy as entrepreneurs. I'm going through that at the moment. Started business about 4 or 5 months ago. And just was saying to Fred before, a lot of you got on the board with this grind and the energy and the just that like need to get up in the mornings and get going all day and, still building time for sleep and exercise and connecting with family. It's a mission, and that's really what I'm talking today is how we fix that. But just from a myth perspective, there are some myths around good health, bad health. I mean, 10,000 steps, I think you guys, that just makes me feel useless because I never hit 10,000 steps, but you'd be glad to know it's a complete myth. We max out at 7,500 steps anyway, and steps are way less important than actually just moving more often. So if you're in a long meeting, which we shouldn't be in as entrepreneurs, but if you are, a brisk walk after that, walking meetings way better than just getting 10,000 steps or even 7,500 steps. So movement, far more important. Breakfast, most important meal of the day. I love that myth. It's a complete myth. There is no science behind that. That was a snap, crackle, and pop thing that Kellogg's brought to us. If you skip breakfast, you tend to manage your weight or your energy better than those who have breakfast. Believe it or not, it has to do with inflammation. It has to do with low insulin. I'll get into that in a moment. But breakfast, you can skip. Imagine that. And you save time. That's like an extra 20 minutes in your day. Valuable information. Coffee. Mo asked me to talk about coffee. So as entrepreneurs, I think coffee is something sent from the gods. Is it good for you? The short answer is absolutely. The more coffee you and I drink, the less chance we have of dying. That was a direct quote from a study Harvard did over 10 years, 20,000 participants, which means a significant study, and it's been repeated many times, so it's not a once-off, that showed coffee was really, really good for us. Polyphenols, antioxidants, it protects us from Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, diabetes, depression, certain cancers. I mean, it really is just, it's amazing stuff. But as entrepreneurs, we need to use it strategically and dose appropriately, okay? Firstly, only black coffee. So the milk and the sugar, not good for you. That's inflammatory. That's insulin up. You don't want that. That messes with energy. So black coffee only. How many cups of coffee a day? Amazing. A study showed 6 cups of coffee a day was recommended. And the improvements or the benefits we've got just improved with more cups of coffee. They stopped at 6. Who knows? Might be 7, might be 8. But the point is, you can drink more than the allotted 2 cups of coffee a day that our GPs of old used to tell us. So black coffee, often the issue is when. Okay, timing really important. Mo, hope you listen carefully. You don't drink coffee within 90 minutes of waking up. All right, that's the deal. So and the reason is when we wake up, we get a natural cortisol spike in our system, which naturally wakes us up. If we have caffeine in that first 45 to 90 minute window, we blunt the effect of cortisol, which means we don't properly wake up, which means our minds aren't alert for the rest of the day, and you get that 3 p.m. crash. And it started because you had coffee first thing in the morning. So if you, like me, have a coffee ritual, which I do, I'll get up and the first thing I have is a decaf cup of coffee. So for the first 90 minutes, I'm doing no caffeine. I'm still doing coffee, but I get none of that effect on my cortisol spike. So that's just a great way of dosing your coffee. After 90 minutes, hit the caffeine, hit it hard. It makes you sharper in terms of focus. It's got all sorts of benefits in terms of brain effect. After 2 o'clock, I go back to decaf. And the reason is caffeine's got a half-life of around 8 hours. So if I'm going to try and hit the sack around 11, 12, I try and hit the sack at around 11 o'clock. I need to know that half the caffeine in my system is already depleted. Now, half-life means if I have 2 cups of coffee, there's 2 cups of caffeine in my system for another 8 hours, or half of that is still in my system after 8 hours. So if you're going to have a cappuccino, or not a cappuccino, an espresso or an Americano at 5 o'clock in the afternoon, add 8 hours onto that, and you still got that amount of caffeine in your system, and you're trying to sleep on that, it just doesn't work. So no coffee within 90 minutes, no caffeine within 90 minutes, no caffeine after 2 o'clock is the best way to dose with coffee. After that, it's, like I said, the elixir of the gods. Drink more coffee, less chance of dying, you're going to be healthier. So Mo, good news. We talk about long life. What you see, this graph on the screen, just really shows the trajectory of life expectancy from the turn of the century. So our forefathers died quickly from injuries or infections. Then, Fleming discovered penicillin, and now we die on average around the age of 75. Okay, but we die slowly. And this is where we kind of get into the meat of today. The reason we die is basically 4 things, 4 horsemen of the apocalypse: heart disease, diabetes, cancers, and neurodegenerative disease. Fred and I were talking about the 40 to 60 year kind of valley of the shadow of death, where these diseases really kick in. These 4 horsemen are responsible for 80% of our deaths. So if you want to combat that, if you want to stream through your 40s, 50s, 60s with all the energy and still be building more and more companies, you've got to avoid these guys. You've got to avoid a slow death. So most of us are going to die slowly, unless obviously we text and drive or base jump or skydive. Don't. So those of you who have read Atiyah's book, Outlive, this is a famous graph that he put out there, which really showed the way we were trained as medical doctors back in the day. You've got health span versus lifespan. Health span is how well you live. Lifespan is how long you live. I was trained to extend lifespan, usually at the end of life, at great expense and great discomfort. The new approach to medicine is not too concerned about lifespan, more concerned about health span, vitality, energy. I want to live well for as long as possible. I've got aging parents, they're both in their 80s. I keep telling them, do what I tell you and you'll die quickly, which taken out of context sounds horrible. But the point is, I want them to be strong and capable and able mentally and physically up until a week before they're going to shuffle this mortal coil, and then they die quickly. And that's what we all want. So health span is key, not lifespan. And the way you do that is you avoid these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. If you can put those to one side, you're going to be dealing with health span. And with health span comes energy and everything you need to run great companies. This was a quick little story. This is the oldest documented lady ever to have lived, Jean-Louise Calmar. She died at the age of 122, okay, lifespan. And here's why I'm telling you the story. She was a fascinating old lady. She grew up in France. Remember the Eiffel Tower being erected. She rode a bike until the age of 100. She quit smoking at the age of 115. Felt it was becoming a habit. But on her 120th birthday, 2 years before she passes away, she gets asked a few things. They have a big celebration. She speaks. At one point, she said, I have no peer pressure, which nice. She also said, I've only got 1 wrinkle and I'm sitting on it, which was like too much information. But here's the thing. She says, if I could live my life over, she's 120, I would trade a long life for a good life. Never forgotten that. What she really was saying was, I choose health span over lifespan. I don't want to live long if I'm not living well. And I just wanted that to land with you guys. Health span is where you want to be today, not lifespan. So if health span is the goal, it means we've got to avoid these 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. What's the number 1 trigger for those 4 horsemen? What's the 1 risk factor by a margin of 4, or a factor of 4 rather, that makes us susceptible to the 4 horsemen? And again, I could ask you, but given time, I'll tell you what it's not. It's not high blood pressure. It's not smoking, not stress. It's not even obesity. The number 1 factor for the 4 horsemen is age. It's a lame answer, but it's a true answer. But here's the thing, and here's what I want to land with you guys. It's not your chronological age. It's not the number of times you circle the sun or the number of candles on your cake. It's your biological age. Big difference. That's the real story. The age of your cells and your systems. That's why someone at the age of 50 or someone at the age of 60 could be running marathons, while someone else at the age of 60 can't walk upstairs. Same chronological age, vastly different biological age. Are you with me? And as entrepreneurs, we need to be focusing on that biological age. How old are we really? Now, you might be saying, okay, so I get that, Michael. I look at my vitality age, all these little funny epigenetic clocks, and, cute. Not necessarily cute. Actually, there's some great scientific validity behind that. But the kickback I often get is great. So now you want me to reverse my biological age, because it is reversible and you can slow down the pace of aging. But you're going to make me want to eat salads and chew on, ice cubes and kale, and it's this joyless self-denial. And no, firstly, it's not that. If that's what you think I'm preaching when it comes to entrepreneurs and energy, no. There's lots of good science around all the people in the blue zone, Sardinia and Okinawa, of guys are drinking wine and eating carbs and having a lot of sex. There's this wonderful connection between play and pleasure and purpose when it comes to health span. So it's not joyless self-denial, guys. This is not getting up at 5:30 a.m. every morning to go to gym. No, that helps, but that's not it. The other big critique is this. Okay, so if you're telling me my biological age is X, so I can slow down my biological age, but what if I've got bad genes? Doesn't mean my lifestyle is not going to impact on my genes, because I've just got bad genes and I'm pretty screwed anyway. Probably the biggest critique I get. And the simple answer to that is it's not true. Genetics, very briefly, is your blueprint. That was given to you by your folks. You can do nothing to change your genetics, your DNA. What you can change is your epigenetics, how your DNA gets expressed. So, for example, you might have inherited a risk for heart disease or cancer or Alzheimer's or diabetes. That's what could be genetics. Epigenetics is up to you. You can turn off that bad gene by how you choose to live, how you eat, how you sleep, how you move, how you connect. All right, vitally important. Probably the best news you're going to hear all day. Your biology listens to your behavior. Behavior trumps biology. This is a horrendous picture, as I look at that now, of what could be. I did my DNA test a little while ago, showed that I have the obesity gene. Genetically, thank you very much, Mom and Dad. I can understand the pointy nose and the small ears and the big forehead, but you gave me the obesity gene. Really? And I remember reading that, feeling so disheartened, falling on a couch and opening up a bag of crisps and just stuffing my face, because it's my destiny. I'm just going to get fat. But the truth is, if I'm active on a daily basis, I can turn off that bad gene. So my genes react to my behavior, not the other way around. And there's some amazing statistics around that. So that's what my genetic profile said. It's not about me. Here's the good news. When it comes to health span, energy, even lifespan, when it comes to genetics, it's 7% genetics, 93% epigenetics or lifestyle, which means, guys, you have agency. How you choose to live now affects everything that you do. That has a 93% effect on your health. So the question then is, how then shall we live? Which is the question we want to answer in the next 15 minutes or so, very quickly, and then we're going to open for questions and we can dive into some of the detail. But imagine you're building a house. Your health is a house. You want strong foundations, a strong, solid structure. That is how we eat, sleep, move, and connect. That's your foundation. That's the house. The rapamycin, the EBU, the HBOT, the cold plungers, the NAD, the supplements, the sexy biohacking stuff we read about and watch on TikTok or whatever the case is. That's smart lighting. It's artwork. It's cute, but it's not fundamental. The truth is, the boring basics work stupidly well. They really do, and they're largely free. And it's something we can apply day to day without having to spend time or money making sure that it works. So they're the 4 pillars of great health, good energy, and this is going to mean that you can fly through your 30s, 40s, 50s, and 60s and build as many companies as you like, because you have the energy to do that. Eating. You might have heard the phrase, you are what you eat. Another myth, it's not true. Think about this. 2 people eat the same slice of chocolate cake. One burns it off like jet fuel, the other stores it like retirement savings. Different genetics, different mass, different gender, different. So there's no one size fits all. So when it comes to eating, I'm not about to tell you this is how you should eat. But when it comes to slowing down your pace of aging, improving your biological age, ensuring you have the energy to go day to day without stopping, there is a way to eat. And it's simply this: eat less often, eat less sugar. Those 3 things. Eat less often, eat less sugar. Eating less, very basically, studies from yeasts to primates to human beings all show that if you reduce your calorie intake without malnutrition, and I'll explain to you what I mean by that, you see a reduction in inflammation, you see a reduction in biological age, a slowdown of all sorts of inflammatory markers. It's just good for you. How much less? 20%, a fifth of your plate. That's all. That's around 250 to 400 calories per person. That's all. So not a lot less, just a little less. And if you're going to be eating less, and this is one of the non-negotiables for entrepreneurs, if you're eating less, make sure you're getting proteins and leafy greens and healthy fats into your diet. So ditch the carbs, ditch the highly processed food. Let your calorie reduction be in that side of things, but keep the protein, keep the leafy greens. Make the calories you do consume count, because a calorie isn't a calorie. A calorie of kale is not the same as a calorie of Coke. Too much to go into those details. Trust me on that. Use your calories wisely. Eat a little bit less, make them good calories. Protein is vitally important at every age, not just as we age. Eating less often, guys, if you just Google time-restricted eating or intermittent fasting, there's so much good science around that. All it's really doing, all you're really doing is giving your body a chance to reduce your insulin levels. Remember, when insulin is high, when you eat, your body triggers insulin. That insulin stores fat and prevents you from drawing on fat for energy. All right. That's just how your body works. So if you can keep your insulin low for as long as possible, it allows your body to finish your glycogen, your glucose stores in your liver and your muscles, and start tapping into your fat stores. So there's this wonderful fat reduction or weight loss effect that you get from eating less, but you also get a reduction in inflammation, because insulin is an inflammatory hormone. And when it comes to inflammation, when it comes to brain functioning, and we'll get to that in a moment, inflammation just is bad for your brain, bad for decision making, bad for stress management. And insulin is one way of reducing inflammation by keeping it low. So essentially, all you're doing with intermittent fasting is allowing your body to finish last night's dinner properly, getting it out of the fridge and allowing you to dip into the deep freeze, your fat stores, to draw on energy. You could way more fat stores for energy than you do glucose. And it's just it's how your body was designed. So as a family, we do 16-8. We have a fasting or eating period of 8 hours. We fast for 16 hours. It essentially means I have my last meal at 8 in the evening and I don't eat again until midday. Simple as that. Skipping breakfast really, really works. So, and the other beauty of that, by the way, when it comes to biological aging, is something called autophagy, cellular renewal. Your body naturally just does its own spring cleaning, gets rid of old damaged cells, replaces them with newer, better cells, in layman's terms, and that's triggered by intermittent fasting and low insulin for extended periods of time. So that effect, that autophagy effect, kicks in at around 12, 13, 14 hours, which is why it's so important to fast for an extended period of time. It's not starving fasting. Starving is having that celery stick every half an hour, just like, I can't lose weight. No, because you keep triggering insulin every time you put something in your mouth, whether it's healthy or not. And so you're never getting a chance to get into your fat stores, you're never getting to autophagy, and you're not slowing down your pace of aging. And that's it. Eating, I'm going to skip through some of that. So eat less often. I'm not even going to tap into eat less sugar. You guys know that. The big idea here is not about banning carbs. It's about being metabolically flexible. If you're going to eat sugar and highly processed foods all the time, your body gets used to using that and gets less efficient at dealing with fat stores, and you become metabolically inflexible. You want to be as flexible as possible, like a hybrid car, able to use your electric battery or your fuel engine at any given time. That's what eating less sugar is going to do for you, keep you metabolically flexible. Okay, eat less often, eat less sugar. Supplements, when it comes to entrepreneurs, please don't have a bevy of supplements and think that's going to make up for a bad diet. It starts with good food. First and foremost, you cannot out-supplement a bad diet. I think you guys know that. So what I'm going to share with you are the basics of supplements you should be taking over and above a good diet. Any more than what I'm going to put on the screen is only needed if you do blood tests or blood work and it shows that you're deficient in certain minerals or elements. Then you can replace that with a supplement. Other than that, you don't need a handful of supplements. That's all you need. Omega-3s, and not omega-6, not omega-9s, omega-3s. Omega-6 and 9 are pro-inflammatory. You don't want inflammatory information in your body. Omega-3s are anti-inflammatory. So as many omega-3s as you can. Vitamin D3, fantastic. It's a wonder drug for all sorts of reasons. Magnesium, great for energy, just energy reactions in your body. It's a core element for all sorts of bodily functions. And then creatine, one of the most researched, if not the most researched supplement around. It's safe. It's great for physical strength. It's great for mental strength as well. 5 grams a day at least. And those would be the stack that I take on a daily basis. Any more, as I said, draw some bloods, make sure that it's specific to you. If you have some deficiencies, you can treat those, but that's the stack that should be in your kitchen on a daily basis. So that's eating and supplementing. Probably the most important aspect we should talk to when it comes to entrepreneurs is sleep, or the lack thereof. Here's a horrendous statistic, and the statistic is this: when it comes to sleep in men, the issue is testicles. Men who sleep 5 hours or less have got smaller testicles than men who sleep 7 hours or more. It's not an opinion, it's a medical fact. All right, Matthew Walker wrote the book, Why We Sleep. He uses that as a bit of a draw card. It's true. When you're getting 5 hours or less, gentlemen, you get a 10 to 15% drop in your testosterone levels. A man with low testosterone, brain fog, lack of libido, belly fat, low muscle mass, a lot of meh, not a pretty picture, and sleep is what triggers that. You can fix it by getting at least 7 hours sleep. 7 to 9 is your kind of happy period, or that happy window. And it's not just men. Ladies, it affects you too, not on a testosterone level, obviously, but if you're sleeping 5 hours or less, your risk of hypertension goes up by, high blood pressure goes up by 50%, diabetes by 25%. Your risk for depression goes through the roof. Your leptin and ghrelin, your appetite hormones, just go out of whack when you're not getting enough sleep. And often we consume more calories the following day after having a bad night's rest than we do if we've slept appropriately. Your risk for cancer goes up. In fact, Matthew Walker talks about a global sleep experiment we do every year called daylight saving. On the day that we lose an hour of sleep, we see an increase in heart attacks of 24% just on that day. That's how important sleep is. On the day that we gain an hour of sleep, thankfully we don't do this in South Africa, we see a drop in heart attacks of 21%. Same profiles for suicides, motor vehicle accidents. Sleep, vitally, vitally important. It's not laziness. It's not something I've just got to do to fill the time between work. Sleep is recovery. It's therapy. It's vitally, vitally important. As entrepreneurs, we have to prioritize sleep. It is a non-negotiable. So let me quickly tell you a bit about REM sleep, right? Particularly for us as entrepreneurs. So very important. Knowledge workers, this is what you want, fresh and functioning optimally. When we sleep in essentially 90-minute cycles made up of 3 phases. The first phase is just light sleep. 45 minutes, your body's kind of getting into the zone. Your next phase, the next 45 minutes, half of that is deep sleep. That's when your body physically recovers. Your immune system does the work it needs to do. And then the last phase is REM sleep. That's when your brain does all its therapy. It cements memories. It basically writes itself overnight. If you're not getting sufficient hours of sleep, in other words, if you're not getting those full 90-minute cycles, you're not getting enough REM sleep. And REM sleep is what helps you deal with stress like a mental ninja. REM sleep is what means you can focus and charge all day. If you haven't got that sleep, you're not going to be able to do it. And often what you find is if your REM sleep is going to fade, and I'll tell you the biggest issues with REM sleep, the things that trigger REM sleep: caffeine, okay, alcohol, sleeping tablets. If you're taking any of those just before you go to bed at night, you're damaging your REM sleep. And what you're probably finding is just before you get up in the mornings, you have these wild, vivid dreams. And that's because your body is doing everything it can to maximize the REM sleep that you get in your last cycle. So if you're getting crazy dreams, that's a good indication that you're not getting enough REM sleep. Enough said, getting into too much detail there. So some good sleep habits. And again, Google this, guys. Figure this out for yourself. Ask ChatGPT or Claude, whoever you use, Gemini, and just say, this is who I am. This is my age. This is my routine. Give me the best sleeping habits to make sure I maximize on sleep. Some non-negotiable, 7 to 9 hours. That's what you want to look at. Nothing less than 7. More than 9, and you're getting a bit sedentary. Early morning light. Vitally, vitally important. It resets your circadian rhythm. That's also a non-negotiable for entrepreneurs. It's the first thing you can do. Get up in the mornings, get that natural sunlight into your eyes. If you've ever listened to Andrew Huberman, he talks about this all the time. Consistency is another vital, important thing for sleep. If you're getting your 7 hours in, but you go to bed at 1 a.m. and then 11 p.m. and then 2 a.m. and it's inconsistent, your body doesn't react to that. It doesn't deal with that very well. You've got to go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time, Monday through Sunday. Your body loves that. All right. What else? Obviously, screens are no-goes. Here's an interesting little hack, and I might come back to that a bit later, is just before you go to sleep, all right? Often, and I have a lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of fellow business owners battle with this, is you ruminate. Like, you just can't turn your mind off. You lie down on that pillow and your head is just racing. It's going berserk of all the things you need to do and what hasn't been done and the issues you're facing. So a couple of things you can do there. In fact, 3 things. Nice little hack for ruminating brains. Firstly, write down three of your biggest problems and 3 actions that you can take facing those problems, to deal with those problems tomorrow. So it lets your mind know, I've dealt with these things. Tomorrow, I know I'm going to get up and I can kick off with that. So that just deloads what's in your brain. The next thing you want to do is manage your stress. So normalize your autonomic nervous system. Again, you have a sympathetic nervous system and a parasympathetic nervous system. So sympathetic is your fight or flight. That's when you're stressed. That's up here. Parasympathetic is more your rest and digest. You're cool, calm, and relaxed. You don't want to live like that. You don't want to live like that. You want to live like that. And the quickest way to normalize your autonomic nervous system and just to make sure you're in a stable, steady state is something called the physiological sigh. It's a breathing technique. There are lots of them. This one works particularly well. And there's lots of studies around this type of breathing. It's called a physiological sigh, and it works like this. It's simply a deep inhalation through your nose, and at that maximal point of inhalation, you go 1 more, and then out through your mouth. That's the physiological sigh. I'll do it 1 more time. That normalizes sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous systems. It's the quickest way to de-stress, to level out, and just before you go to sleep, such a useful exercise. You don't need to do it for 20 minutes. You can do it for 5 minutes, and that normalizes stress level. So you've deloaded, you've got your issues on a piece of paper or on your your iPad or whatever the case you're using. You've de-stressed with a bit of breathing. And the final thing, the final great little hack, if you battle to fall asleep, is a warm shower just before you go to bed. Because as you get out of that shower, your body drops by a degree in terms of temperatures, and that's a strong trigger for your body to fall asleep. So think about that. Just write down what you need to do, breathe, quick shower before bed, and you'll stop that ruminating and that struggle to fall asleep, as most of us do. So that's sleep in a brief nutshell. How are we doing time-wise, Fred? 2 more things.
Yeah, we got a few minutes, but I think there's a ton of questions already coming through. So yeah, when you're ready, let's open it up. I have questions as well. So
all right, let's land this quickly then. I mean, it's the basics. So exercise, I think, is an absolute non-negotiable for entrepreneurs. You're going to say, where do I fit the time in? How much time? We can deal with all of that in a moment. But from a danger perspective, this was a fascinating study. Something like 750,000 US veterans. They looked at what was the biggest risk for early death, and it turns out, if you see on your screen, being sedentary, unfit, was by another factor of 3 way more dangerous than smoking, diabetes, heart disease. So a sedentary lifestyle, dangerous. And as entrepreneurs, often we find ourselves stuck to our chairs, heads in our laptops, going crazy all day. Dangerous, guys. That's sedentary. When it comes to longevity, slowing down your pace of aging, when it comes to energy and energy creation and the ability to power through the day, exercise is just a no-brainer. It is probably the most powerful longevity drug we have, and it's largely free. It just costs time. Let me not get into the science, other than to say, for one thing, and again, as entrepreneurs, this really matters most. When you exercise, your brain is flooded with something called BDNF, brain-derived neurotropic factor. It's essentially fertilizer for your brain, and again, helps you manage focus and stress and concentration and memory. It turns you into when you train, you get smarter. That's the bottom line. Yeah, it's a must. Strength-wise, it's your armor. That's when it comes to longevity, and we're not talking about that particularly today, but muscle equals longevity, vitally important. There's hormonal impacts, there's cardiovascular impacts. It's just, take my word for it, you must be exercising. And here's your prescription for exercise, all right? If you want to know what exercise or how much or when, ideally, you want to do zone 2 training, all right? This is great for VO2 max. I'll talk to that in a moment. But zone 2 training is essentially training at 60 to 70% of your heart rate. It's training where you can have a conversation with someone else. The quick way to measure this is if you can sing while you're exercising, you're not exercising. If you can talk but not sing, that's zone 2. And if you can't talk, between breaths, that's sort of zone 4, 5, and 6. Essentially, that's high impact training. You want to focus on zone 2 because that's got the biggest impact on VO2 max, which is a great proxy for longevity, energy, all those good things. Strength training, also no brainer. Muscle is armor, muscle is longevity. As we get older, vitally important. Even if you're in your 30s, you still want to be building a decent base of muscle. From your 30s onwards, you're losing around 8% of muscle mass every decade if you're not training it. So you've got to keep that muscle and not lose it. And then the final aspect or formula is HIIT workouts. Those are those workouts that you do for 60 seconds. You want to throw up, you rest, you do it again. HIIT workouts, also really good for VO2 max. And that's the kind of ratio. So whatever time you've got, 3, 2, 1. 3 zone 2, 2 strength, and 1 HIIT workout exercise. Best exercise in the world? It's not CrossFit. It's not High Rocks. It's not strength training. It's the exercise you will do. It's the exercise you can fit into your busy day. As long as there's movement built in and it's movement at intensity, it all counts, which is great. It kind of opens up the whole world of exercise. You don't have to follow some personal trainer's regime. I do need to mention this, sitting. Even if you are exercising on a regular basis and getting your daily dose, and if you're sitting for extended periods of time, your risk of early death, your risk of energy mismanagement goes through the roof. It's fascinating. Just by sitting stationary, it messes up with our insulin metabolism. It does a whole lot of danger to our biochemistry by being stationary. Okay? In fact, there was a wonderful study that compared sitting to smoking. They showed for every cigarette you smoke, you shorten life expectancy by 11 minutes. Every hour you sit, listen to this, you shorten life expectancy by 22 minutes. That's how bad sitting is for us. How do you combat that? Well, not by exercising on a daily basis. Even if you exercise and still sit for extended periods, it's still dangerous. You combat sitting by moving regularly. Every half hour, get up, make a phone call, pick a fight with someone, do jumping jacks or something. Ideally have walking meetings, meetings no longer than half an hour. Movement matters, and it matters significantly. So 10,000 steps, that's a myth. Move often and regularly, way more important. Sitting is killing us. And finally, and then let's kind of land with this. This is hard to do. This is connection, the fourth key pillar of reducing your pace of aging, maintaining your energy. The Harvard Adult Study on Human Development has been going for 86 years. Massive study, longest study of its kind on human health, shows one thing essentially: healthy relationships are good for us. Social isolation is toxic. On a level of smoking 15 cigarettes a day or being obese, that's how bad social isolation is for us. And the counter is proper connection. Connection reduces stress, it reduces cellular aging at a cellular level, and it reduces inflammation. How is not enough time to explain that to you. Just know that people buffer stress, connections reduce inflammation, and they make us perform better. So social connections is not something nice to have or when I've got time. It is crucial for your performance as an entrepreneur. And there's a prescription for it. It's almost embarrassing, but put all of the studies together and they show that if you can connect with 5 strangers on a weekly basis, and by that I mean waving at your neighbor, the smile at the barista, the chat to the Uber driver, all of that is connections that add up. We call that social vitamin C, social capital, if you like, that makes a difference in terms of connection, that buffers the stress you're dealing with. 5 strangers a week, 3 close friendships that you can call at 2 a.m. in the morning when all hell breaks loose. That really matters. And 1 hour of face-to-face connection on a daily basis, cumulatively. That doesn't mean I need to spend an hour with Fred staring at him, but everyone I connect with face-to-face, not over screen, certainly not swiping, that all adds up to important connection. So it's not about steps, guys. It's about tracking people. We know that stress is fraying our biological laces. I'll get to that in a moment. I talked about the physiological sigh. Here's something, and that's really, it really deals with the issue that most entrepreneurs deal with, is your neuroregulation. We run high cortisol, we run high stress, and what breathing does is just normalize that. So that little breathing technique I showed you, that's something you should be doing on a regular basis, because the more you do it, the more your body adapts to dealing with high cortisol and high stress. Cold showers, you probably read, it's good for you, like cold plunges. Really what it's doing is it puts your body in a stressful state and allows you to manage that stressful state through breathing. And it is essentially a way to train yourself to deal with stress and become fitter and more resilient at managing stress. It's as simple as that. So let me close with that. Four strategies, lots to take in. I think Fred said this is going to be recorded and shared. Let's get into some questions in a moment. An illustration that I'm sure many of you heard, just to get to the final point, is what do we measure? So of all these strategies, and if I'm going to apply these, Michael, and put time and energy and money and effort into that, I want to know that it's working. I want to know that I'm not going to be that guy in my 40s, 50s, or 60s that, you know, collapses with a heart attack. How do I know it's working? What's the number I should be tracking? Because the weight on the scale, my BMI, my steps, my cholesterol, those are cute and they count to a degree, but they're not vital. What's the one number you and I should be tracking that measures how we're doing energy-wise, how we're doing longevity-wise, how we're doing in terms of our biological age? What's that number? And the illustration here is Second World War, bombers returning from their sorties, and military analysts would map the bullet holes in these planes and say, okay, where these bullet holes are, that's where we need to reinforce the plane, the wings, the fuselage, until some young mathematician said, surely we should be mapping the bullet holes in planes that didn't return, the engine, the cockpit. That little illustration is exactly what we do in healthcare and in health in general. We track metrics that are easy to measure, but not the ones that really matter. The metrics that matter, the metric that matters, the cockpit, the engine, is VO2 max, guys. Your VO2 max is the metric I'd love you to track from now on. Whatever you do, whatever meal you take, exercise you do, just track your VO2 max. It's something that changes slowly, but you can change it, you can affect it, you can improve it. And that's the best news ever. Okay, so VO2 max, very crucial. You can track what your VO2 max should be for your age. There's a simple little graph that I'll leave with you guys. There's some slides that you can check later. But here's the final slide for you. These are the non-negotiables. So this is the entrepreneur's checklist of everything you should be doing, or not doing, but just the non-negotiables. I would say sleep consistency, vitally important, and morning light. Got to get your sleep right, guys. That's your recovery. That's built-in energy time. VO2 max, essential. Great proxy for longevity, great proxy for biological age and energy. Track your VO2 max. And protein. Please have sufficient protein. If you want to work out your exact amount, 1.6 grams per kilogram at least. All right. And then kind of second tier non-negotiable, recovery. Just make sure you're recovering properly. How you're sleeping, how you're dealing with your stress. And the metric to monitor there is HRV, heart rate variability. You want high HRV. High HRV is healthy, and that shows that you're in a recoverable state. You know that you're not recovering because, I mean, we all go through stress. Distress, eustress. Eustress is when you hit it hard, you bounce back quickly, you feel better. Distress is when you hit it hard and you just can't bounce back anymore. You've got recovery issues, and you can track that with HRV. Breathwork, vitally important. Connection, we talked to that. Let me land it there. Fred, sorry, I flew through that, but that was essentially it.
Michael, thank you so much. I just want to say something just to honor you and the information that you've just shared. You have the skill, which I think is remarkable, which is to take some very complicated topics and make them really clear. And what I particularly love are the various mnemonics and little memory hooks that you use. I mean, an example you didn't even mention at this time is in the previous, we had a meeting about 3-4 years ago where you spoke about don't eat anything that needs to go ding. And I still remember that. It's like, it speaks to, eat something that's healthy and from the earth and as much as possible, try.
Flies or swims, go for it.
It's so remarkable. The impact that this information has on our bodies. And there's some really very talented entrepreneurs on this call at the moment, and people who are doing some pretty great things. And there's so many questions, and I mean I'm going to just be bold here and ask you for a follow-up session because there's too many questions, at some point we would love to get you back on and just just have a conversation around some of the points that you've mentioned. We're going to share the presentation far and wide. I saw some questions in the chat, but the first point that I want to open with, and I see there's a couple of questions which I'll try and get to in the next 15 minutes or so, is around the mindset. And mindset is something that Professor Carol Dweck, who wrote a book called Mindset. She's a professor from Stanford University. She's done remarkable research around the world, and just talking about entrepreneurs particularly, and the fact that there's two different types of mindset. There's a growth mindset and there's a fixed mindset. And in terms of being, it's not just an entrepreneurial thing, but in terms of life, to have a growth mindset is so much more important than to fixate upon the goal, rather to look at each moment as a learning experience. And there's a philosophy that's I'm hearing coming through what you're saying in these slides. It's move, it's eat, it's think, almost like we're young, and when we're young, we eat. It's not about the eating experience. It's about eating because we need fuel, and then we want to go do the fun stuff. We move, like we dance around and we play and we're playful, and when we think, we have this this youth mindset. And I think as we get older, like there's something around entrepreneurs that I think is really crucial to have that exploratory. My colleague Louis, who's on the call here, he calls it. He really talks a lot about wonder, this idea of wonder, and I want to talk about. There's almost a debt that we are racking up as entrepreneurs in our intellectual and emotional state. Because we're working so hard, because we're sitting so long, and because we're hustling all the time in order to attain these really difficult goals that we've set for ourselves. How do we balance that? How do we repay the debt that we rack up in working so hard? I mean, yeah.
I mean, let me quickly answer that. I mean, some debt is repayable, some is not. So I think it's important to make this statement: it's never too late to make a change. Often people come, I'm too far gone. I've had the heart attack. I've had the breakdown. No, it is never ever too late to kind of make those corrections. And by the way, when it comes to behavior change and corrections, and I'll get to your answer in a moment, willpower is a terrible strategy. Like, I'm going to do this. I'm just going to like drive through it now. I'm an entrepreneur. No, willpower sucks. It's awful. It's systems. It really is. Just build in systems. Atomic Habits, what a great book. Build in systems that make it easy to be healthy. I have an indoor trainer. First thing I do when I get up in the mornings, before I've even woken up, I'm in my kit. I'm on my indoor trainer and got my laptop open. It's embarrassing. There's a desk there on the indoor trainer, but I'm journaling. I'm reading. I'm doing my daily Bible readings. I'm kind of catching up on emails, and 45 minutes into the day, no one's up yet. I haven't affected family, but I've got my exercise in. I've kind of prepared the day. I've planned the day. System. So it's getting those systems in place that make it easy to do the simple things. On your question around, is it too late? No. I mean, your body can recover performance and many risk markers when you fix your sleep and stress and fitness and nutrition. So if you get that right, your body does recover and recovers quickly. But chronic exposure, so like years of lack of sleep and high stress, is linked to downstream cardiometabolic and cognitive risk. So the dose is the poison, or it's not the poison, it's the dose that really matters. So starting today, recovery sleep, vital. I mean, but it's not magic. So I mean, if you want to put it in entrepreneur terms, you can refinance a lot of health debt, but compounding interest is real, and the earlier you start paying it down, the cheaper it is. That makes sense.
I hear you, and I see Angelica's question around sleep, which I think is so important. Sleep is almost, we need to do a whole other section just on sleep, because it's something that we, in our research, we've seen this link between sleep, anxiety, and performance. This feeling of fatigue that we rack up after, hectic deadlines. This is something that is across the board, whether it's a small startup, a single person business, solopreneur, or a scale up business, that I think you're involved in, and
there was actually, I mean, Fred, I'm interrupting you, but there was a fascinating study on early morning light. I mean, I mentioned that fleetingly in passing, but they used that for the wired but tired entrepreneur. So if you want to know what wired but tired is, that's you that crashes mid-afternoon, that is always seeking stimulation, that gets a second win at 9 p.m. And if you're tracking your HRV, it's trending downwards. All right, that's wired but tired. And there was an interesting study that showed early morning light resets your circadian rhythm. It really just tells your body, okay, you're up now, and in about 14 hours, you need to start shutting down. And just getting that reset right. Because, I mean, I've got a mate who's a wonderful entrepreneur. I mean, he tries to get into bed at sort of 10, but he's up at 1. And from between 1 and 4, he's just working, because that's just how his body is. You need to be able to fix that. And early morning light, according to this particular study, really was important. So it's just one of those key healthy sleep habits, or, putting systems in place that allow you to, activate what's healthy and lean on these pillars of good health.
I think there's just one tip for everybody on the call. I mean, I see a lot of acknowledgement to the sleep thing. Kelly mentioned it as well. The sleep thing is a problem, and an answer. It's not the answer, but an answer is the thing around systems, habits, and Atomic Habits is just a wonderful book. I've recommended that book to so many people in terms of trying to address the sleep issue. The systems that one puts in place, to your point, Michael, is so crucial. And just part of it is just acknowledging it, acknowledging that, sleep is a thing. It's a thing that we need to just address. And there's a balance, this weird balance of just understanding that because of the nature of the work that we do, that, sleep is going to be compromised, but at the same time to work in it, work on the systems, to graduate. It's not a button that we can just press.
What made a big difference to me, Fred, is seeing sleep not as being lax, not as just downtime. Sleep is a performance driver. So if I'm not going to get sleep, my following day is just not going to be as effective as it could be. So all of a sudden, sleep isn't like something I can just compromise on, and I don't need that much sleep because I'm going to do better work. Or no, sleep is performance. It's what your body needs. It's the upgrade. It's the therapy. It's the repair. It's not downtime. It's not laziness. You're not slacking off, guys. Sleep, priority. I feel like I'm preaching to the choir, but
no, it's good. Yeah. I think we need to be disciplined. There has to be some sense of acknowledgement of it, and then to slowly lean into it, to really adjust our systems and habits to address the sleep challenge, and look at it as a thing to address over time. It's not a immediate fix, but something that we get into in terms of that. There's another point that I wanted just to bring up, and maybe just a little personal aspect. This is super important. During COVID, there was all of this stuff around vitamin C and zinc, and, we got to double down on this thing. And, speaking to genetics, I did that, right? So I did that, and I was very disciplined about it. And all of a sudden, I started feeling really, really stiff, and really, my body started to rebel against me. And the short story of that is that I was diagnosed with something called hemochromatosis, which is, iron overload. And it's something that vitamin C, the thing that everybody across the country was, told to do, and it was actually really bad for me, because as any medically trained individual will know that, vitamin C actually it binds to the iron in the body, and it's really bad for some of my genes. And then Kanisha made a really good point around, for example, intermittent fasting, which, there's so much research, and, in the same way that vitamin C is there's a blanket prescription of doing this. What about those individuals, and many women, their hormonal levels can't handle the long durations of no food throughout their cycle? I mean, how do we balance? And it also moves to the point of critical thinking. Can you share with us in terms of the individual response to all of this external stimuli, which can be quite overwhelming? Like, we have to do this, we have to do that. How do we balance that with the internal check-in of what's good for us as an individual?
It's such a great comment you make. And Fred, by the way, I did something similar to you. I was dosing on extra calcium for whatever reason, shattered my elbow in a mountain bike fall, went for surgery. Post-surgery, continued with my calcium supplementation, and my elbow froze. And the surgeon said to me, what are you doing? You're such an idiot. You're a doctor. You should know that. I mean, you brought that on yourself, had to re-go and break the elbow again, etc. So, the one size fits all is really dangerous when it comes to health. But we as medical doctors have to base what we say, and all I've shared with you today is not opinion. It's not, well, I think. It's all scientifically valid and validated. And we do that based on the weight of evidence. And the weight of evidence really says for most people, this is the effect that we get with intermittent fasting. For women in particular, there's a period in your cycle when your progesterone is high, when your estrogen is high. Double check me on that, guys. It's been a while since I've consulted on that. When your progesterone is high, when intermittent fasting, you're fighting with your body. You just don't. There's no benefit to you at all. So you've got to figure out what works for you on an individual basis. And it largely comes down to how I feel, for one, but you can also track certain markers. So, track your HRV, do blood results. I do blood work every year. It costs, but it's vitally important. It just gives me a good indication, a baseline of where I'm tracking in terms of, just some key markers. So that's something that's definitely worth doing, particularly at, in this day and age where we have access to that much blood work. So the brief and the maybe inefficient or not insufficient answer to that is you've got to take every little bit of science, even if it's the weight of evidence, and apply it to you individually and personally, because you are unique. Gender, genetics, muscle mass, stress levels, circumstances, it all differs. So you've got to personalize it.
I love that. It's such a vital thing to be able to balance, I guess all of this advice and to internalize it as an individual process. And it's a lifelong process, right? Going forward. And I think, I love the points around VO2 max, by the way. I've been tracking that. I was, in Apple, and Apple has this amazing behavioral system of really kind of driving these points home. I was below average on VO2 max, and I'm very stoked to say that in December I was like above average, so right. It's like it's a great thing. And I think
can I make a comment on that, Fred? So I've got both an Apple and a Garmin watch, and they differ on their VO2 max levels for me. So my Garmin thinks I'm a rock star when it comes to VO2 max. Apple's less impressed. The point is, even if they differ, and they all use algorithms to get to an estimate, so it's not your accurate VO2 max. That's on a treadmill with oxygen and finger pricks every hour until you throw up. It's not a great test. But whatever you choose, track that VO2 max. So if you're a Garmin person, don't look at Apple, only look at your Garmin VO2 max, or vice versa. So just pick one metric and stay with that. Your sleep app or your Oura Ring, whatever you're using to track your sleep, just use one measure and track trends. It's way more important to track trends than it is to kind of pinpoint and kind of go at this point in time I have. It's why we as clinicians, we love HbA1c, which is a 3-month average of your blood glucose, not your fasting glucose a day. It's trends matter way more. So as soon as if you're not tracking wearables, get some wearables, start tracking, get the trends. That's really what makes a difference. And HRV in particular, also really great trend to track in terms of recovery.
Shout out to Lindsay, who her VO2 says she's 22. That's freaking amazing.
It's such a good proxy for longevity, Lindsay. Your VO2 max, it is, like I said, VO2 max and grip strength actually says that's the bomb. But when it comes to cardiorespiratory fitness and how long you're going to live, VO2 max just, there's nothing to match it. So well done. 22. You didn't tell us how old you are. I mean, if you're 21.
If you're 19, that's not great. 38. Well done, Lindsay. That's freaking amazing. I have one last question, and then I think we can wrap it up. And Michael, we really do need you on again at some point. But I just want to say, there's a particular challenge at the moment with all of the stuff that you're saying that we're up against it. There's so much input that we have. I mean, obviously we have all the so-called tech bros like Atia and Huberman and so on and so forth. We have some really great voices. We have access to so much research, but then we also have these quite literally trillion-dollar companies, the farmers, the foods, even now social media companies. They are paying the smartest people in the world and now deploying the smartest tools in the world to addict us to the wrong things. How can we how can we, resist? How in the face of all of that, weight, can we get better? And live to 122. Like, what's that lady called? The
Jean-Louise Calmar.
Yeah.
I don't think I've got an answer for you, Fred. I mean, that's, when you take that first crisp, that chip, and you eat it and you just can't stop.
Like Tredge. Is it Tredge? Who was it on the call? Somebody's eating crisps now. You need to put those crisps down, my man.
The point is, the fact that you can't stop your crisps is not a lack of your willpower. It's thousands and thousands of hours and neuroscientists creating a taste that you just cannot resist. I mean, to your point, Fred, it's rained against us. People want, we're the dopamine nation. That's the hit that kind of keeps us going. It's a hit that keeps entrepreneurs going. So how do we avoid the addictions? How do we avoid the stuff coming down on us? I'm not actually sure. I mean, we can go, be monks. That's not going to work. So I think our dependence on dopamine is something we really need to look into. And you reduce your dependence on dopamine by reducing your dopamine hits. So that, that 5 minutes that you have between meetings, that you're prepared for your meeting, you don't need to do any work, and you kind of sit down and you open up Instagram and you just get one dopamine hit after another. I wouldn't do that. I would, gray out your screen and just take those 5 minutes to breathe, to go outside, to talk to somebody, and just get away from this need to constantly have a dopamine hit. Because the more you get dopamine, the more you want dopamine, and the more susceptible you are then to the addictive nature of what's being rained down on us. Hope that semi-answers your question.
It's a great answer, and it's also a good place for us to end. I want to honor your time, Michael, and honor the folks on the call. This has been so great, and I think one of the, just as a takeout, we have completed a 5-year research project. We've conducted over 10,000 surveys with entrepreneurs, and to your point around community and connection, the strongest predictor of entrepreneurial success is the frequency and quality of interactions between entrepreneurs themselves. Wow. And so that speaks to this thing of connection. We can't do this alone. We're up against it. These trillion-dollar companies will win. The dopamine impulse will overcome us. And the way, to compete is by having conversations like these. So thank you, Dr. Michael. You're a freaking rock star, man. You're a national treasure. We love you. And and I love the clarity. I love the little mnemonics. And I think it's a wonderful work that you do.
Great, thank you. Thanks for having me on, man. You never know what comes up, so I appreciate you trusting me with this kind of information. I'm going to run one quick slide before we go. For those of you that are a QR code, I just need an email address, and I'll send you the slides, and you can kind of go through that if you want. So I'm not sure if you can see that on your screen. There should be a QR code that comes up. Yeah. So for those of you who want the slides, scan that, and I'll send you something shortly.
Cool beans. Thank you, Dr. Michael. Thank you, everybody on the call. You guys all rock. Keep up the good work, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, Michael. Take care, everybody.
Man. Thank you, Mo. More coffee.
Thank you. Yes. That's all I got.
Yes. Me too. There we go. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.